Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Our first story today is all about dealing with a self-appointed secret agent neighbor who thought she was running an undercover operation in her own apartment building. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. She thought she was a spy, so I gave her a reason to run. There's a particular type of person who seems to feel like they're the only thing standing between society and complete collapse. And about 7 years ago, my downstairs neighbor was one of them. She was aloof and paranoid, and she'd imagine threats from almost everywhere, which made the fact that she thought of herself as some kind of secret agent all the more annoying. Said neighbor was always trying to find ways of getting me and anyone else who she thought of as suspicious to move out of the building. She'd stage loud telephone calls with headquarters about the alarming behavior of the other tenants, like my tendency to get home after 9 in the evening, which was clearly scandalous, and frequently yell at the people who'd stand on the corner to smoke. On one occasion, I heard her shouting at someone over the placement of a flower pot in their window, which was obviously an indication that they were selling drugs. Then one afternoon, I found an official notice taped to the wall in the stairwell. It was perhaps the most ridiculous attempt at a government-sponsored document that I'd ever seen. And I'm including the time that my friend Jonathan, then 9 years old, made a flyer for bodyguard services. The atrocious grammar, poorly photoshopped seal, the distinct absence of any legitimate contact information made the thing about as realistic as a scene from NCIS. Furthermore, the reference to the past 2 years seemed to indicate me as her primary target, since I was, as far as I knew, the only resident who'd been there for less time than that. Still, since the notice was clearly meant to scare someone, I decided to return the favor by taking a page out of my neighbor's own playbook. This led me to stand outside of her apartment while staging my own fake phone call. You should see the notice. It's terrible. Yeah, it's like they didn't know that impersonating a federal official is a felony. Anyway, the real FBI are on their way, and they're gonna dust for fingerprints. Whoever made that notice is looking at a lot of jail time. I went back inside my apartment after that, and within seconds I heard my neighbor's door open. There was the sound of hurried footsteps rushing towards the stairwell, followed by an equally hurried retreat. When I went out to check 5 minutes later, the notice was gone. I've since moved away, but for the rest of the time that I lived there, the lady never bothered me again. I can just imagine her standing in the stairwell, sweating bullets, trying to figure out how to smuggle her sad little official notice away before the real government showed up. And our second story. The screensaver that almost got me fired. Back in 2004, I worked for a film and camera shop that has since gone under. They were notoriously cheap and the lab equipment was always failing. The lab manager that maintained the film equipment, let's call him Jim, would only fix the bare minimum things in the lab and would never order new parts unless it was absolutely necessary. In part because we were the smaller secondary location in the mall and he would only send new parts to the bigger stores. He ran maintenance for about 10 stores in the area. Case in point, our film developer was leaving scratches on customers' negatives about once a day. You can't fix the film once this happens, and I got really sick of apologizing for putting white scratches on people's wedding, vacation, family, etc. photos. I about broke into tears the day we really botched the negatives that were the last photos of someone's son that had died. But I digress. The rollers on the developer needed replacing, and every time we'd call Jim to fix it, he'd come out, clean the rollers, and leave. This would make it better for about 6 hours because the problem was they didn't rotate properly, not that they were dirty. I got so sick of this that I made an 8x10 print of our CEO holding a couple rolls of film in his hands with a note that read, "It has been X days since we've wrecked a customer's negatives with scratches. Good job, associates." I then took a Sharpie and wrote a big 0 on the blank spot and left it up. Jim came in a few days later, saw the sign, and angrily tore it down and ripped it up, but he finally replaced the rollers. Jim and I did not get along. Here's where the story about getting in trouble comes in. In the lab, we had a computer for scanning customers' negatives and burning them onto CD. The computer was pretty locked down, so you couldn't install games or anything like that. That's fine. I had a computer at home and didn't care. But there was one stupid oversight. They had disabled the screensaver, and it had a big CRT monitor that needed saving. All day long, it glowed the white display of the order screen, which was slowly burning in. This made it a pain in the butt to scan things incorrectly because the color was so awful. I actually took my job seriously and took a lot of pride in giving good photos to our customers. I talked to Jim about this, and he told me there's nothing wrong with the screen. It works just fine. Well, like I said, the system was locked down. You weren't supposed to be able to get into Windows to do anything, but there were loopholes. The trick was you hit F1 to bring up the Help menu, click File, Open, browse out to Explorer.exe in the Windows folder, right-click on that and select Open, and bam, you were in Windows and could do what you wanted. So I did this and enabled the screensaver and set the monitor to auto power off after 30 minutes. This made a huge difference and we stopped having burn-in issues. But I made a mistake and decided to have fun. I set the screensaver to the maze from Windows. This one, if you don't remember it. I then got the idea to customize it. I took one of the then new and fancy digital cameras. I took a picture of the floor in our store. I took a picture of the ceiling and finally took a picture of the counter with the display case behind it. Using Photoshop, I took a picture of our grinning CEO holding a couple of cameras and put him behind the counter so it looked like he was selling cameras in our store. I took these custom pictures and put them into the maze screensaver. It looked funny and got a chuckle from my fellow drones. Kind of forgot about it until a month later. Jim came in for normal service work. He'd been in our store for maybe 10 minutes when he saw the screensaver. He immediately walked out into the hallway and called someone on his cell phone and started yelling. 2 hours later, the district manager, Scott, shows up, which was odd because we weren't expecting him that day. It seems Jim had called him because he immediately ran over to Scott, pointed at me, and said, "There he is, he did it." Me. Did what? Scott. OP, Jim here says that you put our CEO into the Doom game so you can shoot him. Me. What? I had no clue what he was talking about. Like I said, it had been a month since I put the screensaver in and had completely forgotten about it. Jim. You did, on the negative scanner. Me. Wait, what? No. I was just fumbling for words, so I took them over to the computer, broke into it again really quickly, and started up the screensaver. Jim. See, he admits it. Jim had no proof it was me. Scott, who was a pretty tech-savvy guy, took one look at the screen and just started laughing. He knew that screensaver right away. He then took Jim into the hallway and chewed him out for wasting his time and accusing the associates over nothing. You basically made corporate-themed performance art. And Jim, this absolute narc, saw this harmless joke and decided to blow it up and he put our CEO in Doom so he could shoot him. I'm crying. What kind of leap is that? Final verdict, 10 for 10. Absolute masterpiece of corporate trolling. Jim got exactly what he deserved, and I hope every Photolab machine he touched after that immediately malfunctioned out of spite. And our last story. Jim thought he owned the road until Mother Nature and my dad proved otherwise. Jim was the kind of neighbor that makes you wish for a high fence and a mile of distance. He wasn't just unfriendly, he was actively rude. Never said hello, always scowled in our direction, and got PO'd if we even stepped too close to his property. The real kicker? He drove through our property every single day. Now, this wasn't some shared driveway or legal easement. Jim had two perfectly good access roads that led to his land, where he didn't even live, mind you, just kept some livestock. Yet, for some reason, he insisted on using the one that cut right through our land, even though it was longer, unpaved, and wound through the woods. He never asked permission, never acted grateful. He just assumed it was his right to use our land as his personal access road. That assumption came crashing down, literally. One summer night, a massive thunderstorm rolled in, the kind that makes you double-check your flashlights and hope the power stays on. At some point during the storm, lightning struck a huge walnut tree deep in the woods, and by morning it had fallen straight across Jim's precious shortcut. We didn't even know about it at first. but Jim sure did. Instead of knocking on our door like a reasonable person, Jim went ahead and hired a tree removal service without saying a damn word to us. He told them they could keep the wood as part of the payment since walnut's valuable on our property. Jim was about to profit off our land without even asking. Well, my dad wasn't about to let that happen. We heard the chainsaws before we saw what was happening. My dad, ever the sharp one, immediately knew something was off. He grabbed the sale documents for our property and headed down the trail toward the noise. When he arrived, he found Jim supervising the crew as they got ready to start cutting. Dad, in his best calm but deadly voice, asked, "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Jim, already annoyed, waved a hand at the fallen tree, clearing the road, told them they could have the wood. Dad didn't even flinch. He pulled out the documents, walked to the nearest survey marker, and pointed at it. "See this? This is our property line. The tree came from our land. It's laying on our land. You don't have permission to take a damn thing." The tree removal guys, who to their credit didn't look thrilled about the situation, hesitated. Jim huffed, "Come on, it's blocking the road." "Your road?" "No, Jim, this is our property. If I decide I want that tree to stay exactly where it is, then that's exactly what's going to happen." Jim wasn't used to being challenged, but my dad, he was a lawyer. He didn't bluff. "And just so we're clear," my dad added, turning to the workers, "if you take so much as a single branch from this tree, it's theft, and I will take you to court over it." That was enough for them. They packed up their saws, gave Jim a half-hearted shrug, and drove off. 15 years later, that tree is still there. Jim never tried to clear it again. He still had another perfectly good access road to his land, so he couldn't force an easement or demand anything from us. Instead, the tree sat there season after season, serving as a silent, rotting monument to his arrogance. Every time we walked past it, we'd grin and say, "Thanks, Mother Nature." Because in the end, Jim didn't just lose his shortcut, he lost his sense of entitlement. Screw you, Jim. The fact that the tree is still there makes your dad a real hero in this story. So much more satisfying than, "And then we sold the wood for a few grand." I hope your dad knows how much of a badass he is for that. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.